we can extend the game a little bit further. And if we want to extend the game, we might think, that was one strategy that I'd implemented, but what about other strategies? It would be helpful for me to be able to compare one strategy against another. And this is not a very good strategy. In fact, if I look at this strategy, I'll see that it repeatedly fires at the same location over and over and over again. One consequence of the way in which I've written this code is I could extract this random strategy out very nicely, and I could take a look and see how well does this random strategy actually do by counting the number of times that we interact with the game generator coroutine, how many times we send a shot into it. And if we look at the naive strategy here, we'll see that this naive strategy that's just firing randomly is firing at locations it had already previously fired at. And as a consequence, even though the board is only 6x6 with 36 steps, it takes 123 shots to win. This is a terrible strategy, but we can make it better. And as a consequence of the choices that I've made in my modeling, it's actually very easy to make it better, because I can just replace this generator coroutine representing the random strategy with another generator coroutine and just have it send into my game generator coroutine. Here, I don't need to write an object with some sort of subclassing representation in order to have this extensibility idea, the idea that somebody sets up an interface and then people implement that interface. Here, the interface is very simple. You pass one thing in, you get one thing out. You tell the strategy what the consequence of the last action is, and it tells you what it wants to do next. I don't need a fully fledged class. I could just use a generator coroutine, and I could make this much simpler. And in fact, we can do that and implement a slightly better random strategy. Instead of constantly generating what the random position we want to fire on, which then leads us to firing at the same position multiple times, well, we can just generate all the possible positions that we want to fire on, and given all of those positions, we can then shuffle them and then yield them one at a time. As a consequence, this better random strategy shouldn't ever use more than 36 steps to hit everything on the board, because it's not any better than maybe just scanning the board from top left to bottom right. Maybe by juggling the positions a little bit, maybe it has a slightly higher chance of succeeding, because it's very unlikely that people have put all their pieces in that top left and then you would have hit them immediately. But for the most part, we have a better strategy. And you can see here, better than 123 shots to win, 36 shots to win, but maybe not the best possible strategy. Now, one thing that you'll see that's kind of interesting here is we might actually want to model the board. And the reason for that is we may need, as part of our strategy, some information provided to us in a structured fashion that we can use in order to construct that strategy. In the previous version of the strategy, we'd assume the board is 6x6. But who knows? The board could be 7x7, 10x10, it could be any size. And so we may need to pass into the strategy, these are all the possible locations on the board so that you can construct the places that you want to try to fire at. Well, when we need to do that, we need to take that board and we need to store some information about that board. And to store some information about that board, we don't really need to store anything but maybe just the size and maybe where the ships are located. So we can introduce another very, very simple data class here representing the board. And we can move the logic for parsing the string representation of the board up here into a class method. We can even give this board some helper methods like status that gives us the status of every ship that it is aware of in terms of, is that ship still alive? Does it have positions that have not been hit just yet? And that can simplify things like our main game loop. We can ask, are there any ships that are still alive? If so, keep playing the game. Otherwise, end this loop. There are no more ships to be hit. Everybody has been sunk. When we do that, we can also store information that we need in other places. For example, the size of the board, so that we can identify what are the random positions we want to try to fire on. So we're not firing wildly outside of the constraints or the locations available to us on that board. With that, we have a nice starting point for beginning to iterate on new strategies. In order to iterate on new strategies, we could think, what is a good strategy for the game of Battleship? Probably a good strategy would be randomly find something on the board, fire at it, and if you miss something, then try another random position. Maybe even try and make those random positions as far apart as possible, because we know that most people, when they place their ships in Battleship, they usually place them pretty distributed. Or maybe that's something that we know about our opponent, or maybe that's something that we want to counter. We want to choose clustered random locations, whatever the case may be. When we hit something, however, we might say, you know what, if I hit something here, I shouldn't fire all the way across the board on the other side. I should fire in the vicinity. And so I can create a brand new, better strategy that identifies all the possible locations, picks one of these locations, and here you can see a little bit of non-determinism because we're using this set type. So unless we set our Python hash seed, we will see the results of this bounce around a little bit, but we can pick a random location. And if we hit something in that location, we know that ships cannot be placed diagonally. They can only be placed horizontally or vertically. So if there are spots left to hit on that ship, they're either to the left, to the right, above, or below the spot that we've seen, or maybe we're at the edge, or maybe there's another position that we've hit. So we can come up with some candidates. We can see if those candidates include anything that we haven't already fired upon. We can try to fire on one of those candidates. If we manage to fire on one of those candidates, we could say, oh, well, I moved to the left and I got a hit. Maybe I should keep moving to the left. And so we could try to just keep moving to the left for some number of spaces. We could even try moving in the other direction for some number of spaces. And we can see, does this slightly more intelligent strategy perform better than our random strategy? So let's take a look at our better strategy versus our better random strategy. Our better random strategy takes 36 shots to win. Our better strategy takes 29 shots to win. And of course, it is slightly non-deterministic, but as a consequence of this modeling, what we could do is we could put this into a loop, and we could try 10 trials of this. We could unseed our random number, so we could see over 10 trials, how many shots does it take to win? Is it consistently 29 or is it less? And we can then further refine our strategy. When we think about object orientation in Python, we should never think about what are the real-world entities in my problem and how do I shadow those in my code. As you may have heard people say before, the map is not the territory. When you're writing a program, you're always finding the aspects of the real-world problem that are worthwhile for you to try to model, that are interesting to model. And you're trying to capture those details in your program. Object orientation is one mechanism that we can do to capture those in a very nice way. And it is the only way that we can interact with the core Python vocabulary. If we need to have something beyond just data structuring, we need to actually be responsive to context managers. For example, if you think about our game, maybe as part of our strategy, we want to have the ability to say, try this, but then commit the action or don't commit the action. That could be a context manager. So maybe we could have some context manager with the game. We could say with game.try some action. And then that gives us the game state. And we can see if we like that game state. And if we like that game state, we could commit that game state. Otherwise, when we leave that, we can undo that game state. Very nice vocabulary for expressing the idea of some kind of search through the game space with some sort of perturbation. Well, if we wanted that, we would absolutely need object orientation. But if it's the case that we're just looking for encapsulation, we have other approaches, both the closure approach as well as the generator coroutine approach. And in some cases, they may be better at capturing the details of the program that we actually care to model. If we were to start by modeling a board, by modeling a ship, we might end up somewhere close to where we ended up with in this variation, but we might have found ourselves distracted by all of the small details. If there's a ship class and a board class, should there be a peg class? Should it be a red peg or a white peg? Should we have a first class modeling of the actions? Is that valuable or not? In this case, we don't have any first class modeling of the actions. We don't even have a first class modeling of the pegs themselves. We only have the location that you tried to hit. And we could say, maybe I want to model that. Do note that as part of this strategy, we want to use a Python vocabulary to get some arithmetic operations. We want to say, given a position, add or subtract that position from a location. And so we may discover that much of our use of object orientation is really just something that has these underscore methods for implementing that Python vocabulary and not just a representation of the physical reality. It is the case that even for problems like different games that we might play, the physical reality of that game is infinitely profound. There is no way in the constraints of a simple program that we can capture all of the details of a game of Battleship. We cannot capture more than at least one pass of the rules. That makes it fun for us to play and fun for us to model. But there may be aspects of this game. There may be some sort of strategy behind faking out your opponent for where your piece is, for how quickly you respond to whether they've hit something or not. Maybe you pretend when they fire on some location, you say, no, that's not a hit, just to make them think that they're out in the middle of nowhere. And these are details which we simply can't model, even for a very simple game. But it is the case that we can use object orientation to model the interesting, important details that get us what we want to be able to do, which is here a one-player game of Battleship with the ability to iterate on strategies to see if we can implement better strategies. This brings us to the last session of this series, An Expert's Approach to the Game. Here's what we'd like to do next. I'd love if you could take a look at any of the games that we have tried to implement, and if you could share with us your implementations of these games, your better battleship strategy, your implementation of tic-tac-toe, your implementation of the word games, or your implementation of rock, paper, scissors. Share with us your implementation on Discord or in the YouTube comments if you're watching this video, and let us know how you approach the game. How did you model it, and what parts of Python did you use? What parts of Python did you say really nicely capture the details that you care about? And what parts of Python did you say, this seems to be complicated, but it doesn't really give us any value? Let us know, and we'd love to see how you model these games. But until then, we'll see you all next time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, hit subscribe, and check out the recommended video on the screen. See you in the next one.